You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
Hey guys, welcome back. You're listening to the second part of last week's episode. Let's jump back in.
I want to ask you though, because you have seen so many investors over the years, and not only have you met with and talked with investors, just like you said, like one of the things I really love about Collective Genius is just this idea that it's essentially a mechanism for the best people in the industry to share what they know, right? That's what it is at its core, right? It's like you come here, you share what you know, and so we all benefit from your expertise. So when you look out at investors today, if you were trying to pick someone who you're like, that person's going to make it, that person is going to navigate this fine, they're going to be fine. What do you think are the characteristics of that person, right? And maybe it's someone who's newer today, right? A lot of the investors I've had on this show that are massively successful, well, it started in like 2008, right? And it's like a very common starting point, right? Those people tend to last. So if you had to pick some characteristics of investors that you think are going to make it through this transitional period well, what do you think those are? Or conversely, if it's easier to answer, what do you think the mistakes are that people are going to make that are going to stop them from making it through the way they want?
I think the characteristics of the people that are going to make it are, there's a fight or flight mechanism when I don't even care if you're wealthy, if you're running an active business, there's a fight or flight mechanism that internally that kicks off in you when you sense danger, right? There's a fight or flight mechanism. And for the people who have the fight mechanism, and because that mechanism is what kicks off the intense action, it's what kicks off, what's the word I would use to... There's a balance right now. Someone that understands the balance between safety and aggression, right? It's a tight rope, but someone that understands the balance between safety and aggression is going to win. Someone who is patient, and you have to be able to afford to be patient. Not everybody can afford to be patient, right?
Right. You
have to be able to afford to be patient, literally afford to be patient. I think people who are making quick decisions, like someone who understands the gravity of what's going on in the market and can say, okay, I know that I'm going to look at my P&L and, for the last 12 months, our trailing EBITDA is X. If we get to a certain point, I need to trim my staff here. If we get to another point, I need to trim people who are being very calculated with regards to what's going on in the marketplace and making decisions around data and people people just to embrace change. Like we had a team call today. We have one every Tuesday at 11 o'clock. And a very talented gentleman who's on my leadership team, flips hundreds and hundreds of properties each year. His name is Eric Brewer. He's like, I'm talking to a lot of people and they're just spoiled. They're just spoiled. And a spoiled brat is not going to fare well. Right now, you've got to do what you got to do.
Right.
And that meaning for some people, sometimes there is a contraction before there's an expansion. And you may have just gotten to a point, say, where you've got your dispositions outsourced. But the reality of it is you had order takers, and now you got to really have somebody who can talk to a homeowner and understand their concerns and negotiate. And you might have to get back to the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Depending your tenure in the business and size of business, et cetera, right? You might have to get back to the kitchen table in order to continue to thrive financially, right? And so, but bottom line is, I think people who make quick decisions, who embrace change, who think strategically and use data to make decisions, and you're going to have to be, I think you're going to have to be relentless, Yeah. You're going to have to be relentless. But again, if you're willing to be relentless, you're going to thrive on the other side, because there is going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity because of this, and this is really, we're just talking about the single family space. There's going to be there's going to be a washout in the multifamily space too. So many people, buying properties with bridge loans, short-term interest rates without cap protection on those bridge loans, and fiddler's going to come due, and then with change in interest rate, their only ability to recap out is going to be several points higher, which is going to suck the cash flow out of the. I'm not trying in any way. I want to make sure this is clear. I'm an eternal optimist, but I also balance that with a sense of realism. And I am not in any way trying to be negative as much as I am trying to. When you get rates that rise like this, it creates a lot of dysfunction.
Yeah,
and I'm not in favor of it. I do think rates need to be increased, but I think the reality of it is the Fed is moving. They move too slow to increase rates, and now they're moving too fast without allowing the byproducts of those raises to take effect.
Yeah.
There's more at stake here than just inflation. And so, but I think that's what people are going to need to, embrace.
Well, I think your point about people taking the momentum that they felt and sort of attributing it to their skill set, right? That's a really common thing. Everybody, this is just human nature. Right? Everybody does this in some way or another, right? And I think it's very easy in those good times to really say, well, I've got this all on lock. And then when things change and the context is different, not being willing almost on an identity level to walk backwards and, like you said, sit down at the kitchen table again.
Yeah.
Right. I've had to do that in my business, right? That is such a real thing that you are talking about.
Yeah. And you hit it on the head right there. The identity, like that you can accept from a humble place.
Right.
That you might have to make some changes or shifts in your business that impact your lifestyle or what have you. Yeah, that's you have to operate in humility in order to accept that. And it's a big deal.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to change the topic a little bit because I have to ask you about this because this is my secret burning desire to know. Because look, you run a mastermind. You don't just run a mastermind, you run an incredibly successful mastermind. And not only, I want to be clear about this too. Like, one of the things I really am impressed with about you is not just that Collective Genius is great and you run it, because you have built a team at CG that is absolutely amazing. Like, everybody that works at CG is one of these people where you meet and you just feel like, oh, it's like one of the smartest people I've ever met, right? They're just incredibly good at what they do, right? Just everybody there is awesome. And so I want to ask you about how you think about networking and connecting with other people. Because it strikes me that you have done an incredible job of doing this. You've always been really great at making me feel incredibly welcome in the group. You do that with everybody, right? So you are incredibly skilled at it. I want to know how you think about networking and connecting and your network in general. Like, do you have a system? Do you have a spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Do you have a notebook? Like, how do you do this? Because I have trouble remembering my kids' names, and I only got 2 of them, right? So
Yeah.
How do you think about this? Because it's clearly at the core of your business. Yeah, open question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So that's kind of evolved over time. When I first started CG, it was something that I really wasn't aware of it. But when I started CG, it helped me understand that I had a natural, innate ability to connect people. I would just immediately, when they were talking, I would immediately start thinking about, oh, you mentioned this. I can put you with this person. They can help you with that, right? And so it kind of exposed me to an innate gift that I have. But at this point of the game, with 313 memberships,
Yeah.
it's got to be way more systematic. It no longer relies on me or my quote unquote gift. It's far more systematic. And a top line approach to that is that when we are, number one, at our meetings, and number two, on our monthly masterminds for the team members that each of our members has, there's a very calculated approach to ensuring that the right connections take place. And the funny part about it is, you would think, especially the way you've spoken of the caliber of member of the Collective Genius, that we wouldn't need to do this. But I think that because we do it, it's what creates a tremendous level of success in CG. And so when you come to one of our meetings and you get up and you go through your needs, hey, I'm trying to accomplish this, or I need help with, I've been buying at the auction for years, but the margins have gotten thinned out and I need to start going seller direct and build a sales floor and et cetera, et cetera. No sweat. I'm going to put you together and connect you with Mike Osborne out of Northern California up in Sacramento. And the guy's an animal, has 600 plus rental properties, flips a couple hundred houses a year. I'm going to introduce you to Mike. Mike's going to help you out. Right.
Yeah.
We document that on the spot. Who's in the hot seat in front of the board of directors, right? What do they need? Who can we connect them with? And sometimes that person's in the room.
Yeah.
Right. And somebody say, "Dan, I can help with that." And you're up there and you're like, "Okay, cool, man." Never happened.
Yeah.
You guys go your separate ways. Dan, you're up there. You don't write it down.
Yeah.
You don't seek that individual out and say, "Oh, that dude said he's going to help me." Joe Taylor said he would help me. Let me make sure I write that down and get with him before I leave. Doesn't happen. And so we take responsibility at a pretty high level to ensure that it does. And we do have a spreadsheet and we do document who spoke, what they needed, who can fix it or help them along their journey. And then typically within 72 hours of returning home, that connection is literally physically made by saying, "Hey, Dan, you said you needed help with X. I've got Joe here on this text message, or I've got Frank Cavo on here who can absolutely assist you with that. You guys do what we do, connect, get a time scheduled to chat." Right. And so, probably over the course of any single meeting, there are, I would say between 450 to 600 connections that our team makes afterwards by matching people together.
Wow. That blows my mind. I mean, I should have realized kind of the scale of what you're trying to do, right? Because there's a lot of people in CG and every connection, you got all these things going on.
Want to find motivated seller leads online, but don't know where to start? Download our free Motivated Seller Keyword Report today. AdWords nerds have spent over $5 million this year researching the most profitable keywords for finding motivated seller leads. And you can grab these exact keywords when you download our report at www.adwordsnerds.com/keywords.
Let me ask a connected but sort of different angle of that question, because you mentioned your team, right? You mentioned Frank Cava, who I've met is brilliant. You've got all these brilliant people around you, right? And you've got this giant group of real estate investors. And real estate investors tend to have fairly strong personalities, right? Like they're motivated, ambitious, driven people. They're smart, they're successful. Like there's a lot of big personalities at play. So
we say a lot of bulls in the same pen.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of bulls in the same play. Like I was explaining it to my wife once, and I was like, everyone at CG is an alpha male, including every woman that's there, right? It is like top of the top, right? And to me, that's like exciting, like because that's not necessarily my personality type, and so it brings this really cool energy. But it would also be so easy for that to go right. Like you could bring those people together and have that not work out, have it not gel, or have the vibe be off, for however you want to define that, right? So when you think about leadership in a community of people who are all leaders themselves, is it easier because of that? Is it harder? Like, how do you think about bringing personalities like that together and having it work out?
Yeah. So I don't know that I think it's easier or harder based upon how you approach it. And the things that I will tell you that we have, to give everybody listening a visual, we show two pictures at the beginning of every CG. And the two pictures contain Texas Longhorns. And the first picture shows two Texas Longhorns locked up, right? They're locked up. And then the second picture shows a whole herd of Texas Longhorns all walking in the same direction, and no one is locking horns.
Cool.
And the reason that is the case 99% of the time is because of the culture that we've created at CG. We make it pretty clear, right? Number one, our community comes first. If you don't want to take good care of this community, honor this community, give to this community, it's probably not the best fit for you. Glad to give you your money back. right? Number two, you've got to operate from a place of integrity. Does that mean that everyone is perfect? No, I'm not perfect either. Do we make mistakes? Yes. Are we in integrity 1,000% of the time? No. By and large, you need to be able to do what you're going to do, what you're going to say, right? Number three is go giving. If you don't have a genuine heart to help people, we're probably not a good fit for you, right? And so what I basically just did was go over our core values: community, integrity, and go giving. And those core values are what cement the culture of our organization and put the borders, the guidelines, the bumpers, the guardrails in place of which our members need to play within. And if they go outside of those boundaries, guardrails, bumpers, then we will kindly remove them. Now, we try to prevent that before it ever happens because we have a pretty thorough screening process. We literally had someone, yesterday who's a hitter in our space. They're like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And they're like, well, we're like, Leon on my team is like, well, that's great, but we've got to go through a screening process to figure out whether or not we're the right fit. You don't just qualify because you make a bunch of money and do a bunch.
Right.
You got to qualify because you make a bunch of money, do a bunch of deals, but you're also a pretty decent, respectable human being. So our screening process up front does a ton of that heavy lifting. And then once we get in the mix, we put all the bull in the same pen at an event. We get a better sense of how that person is going to act, behave. And so that's how we keep a great group of people together in our community.
Yeah, it's I love that. There was a lesson that I had to learn last year very personally, right, with my team.
Yeah.
And it just strikes me, right? It's like culture is so hard to get right because it's so easy to lose, right? So it's so easy to compromise a little bit and just have the whole thing blow to pieces, right? And so you guys have just done such an amazing job. I don't want to keep you too long. I will literally talk your ear off about this stuff. I have to ask before we go, CG, you're talking about Go Giving. CG does a lot of charity work. I want to ask you about that. Well, first of all, the decision to make it such a big part of the events, it is a big part of the events every time that I've gone. And it's a fun part. It's not like hey, everybody, you got to blah, blah, blah. You really get people behind the different causes that you support. So what was the process of kind of making that such a core part of what CG is? And then what are you guys working on now, or kind of what's your current thing that maybe we can promote or talk about?
Sure. I've always, and again, we're talking about culture, goes back to the core value of Go Giving. I've always believed that with blessing comes responsibility, a responsibility to care for the people around you who may not have that same blessing. I'm not saying that we either have it or don't. I absolutely feel we create blessing in our life, but ultimately there are people that aren't afforded the same opportunity that need a little help. And so we have what we call the generous genius. That's what Dan is referring to. Collective Genius is our core business. The generous genius is our charitable arm, if you will. And with blessing comes responsibility. I firmly believe that. I'm a tither. If I make $1, I'm going to give away a dime all day long. I can tell you, since I started that 12 years ago, my income has not went backwards a single year, not one single time. And I firmly believe that with blessing comes responsibility. And so I utilize CG and the talent of our membership to get behind certain charitable causes. And, for example, last quarter, Jeff Hoffman was at the event. He has a charity that builds schools in Uganda. And so we raised, I think, $165,000. And what we did was we gave half of that to Jeff. Pretty cool. This is the second time we've done that. The first time, the kids in Uganda, they made a sign, and they don't speak a lot of English, but they learned enough to say, "Thank you, Collective Genius." That was pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
So we're giving half to Jeff. And then we have 3 other folks in our group who are either higher ups or run 501(c)(3)s. YMAM, which build houses in Ensenada, Bright Futures, which serves at orphanages in Guatemala.
Yeah.
And it's not just the raising and deploying of capital. Our members get on airplanes and fly to Ensenada and build the houses.
Yeah.
And they take their kids and they lead by example. So it's full soup to nuts, raising capital, deploying capital, doing the work, getting their hands dirty, bringing their kids. It's kind of a soup to nuts experience. And the reality of it is life is about more than just the accumulation of assets. You reach a point at some point where you realize more is not going to change my life.
Yeah.
In no real way. I'm not going to get a different house. I'm not going to get a different car. I'm not going to put my child in a different school. I'm not like more is not going, doesn't mean you still don't play the game, but you get to a place where more is not going to change your life. And you start asking yourself some deeper questions about like, okay, well, I've accomplished that particular piece of my life. I'm stable, but now what's more beyond just the accumulation of dollars and stuff, So that's what Generous Genius is all about. If anybody would like to make a donation to it, you immediately get a tax receipt emailed to you within like 60 seconds. All of our donations are made public. We screenshot the transfers and put it on Facebook. So it's extremely transparent, if you will. You could go to generousgenius.com and make a donation or not, whatever, good either way. So,
I love it, man. And it really does add something to the community, right? I mean, I think it really brings people together in a way that like just saying, obviously everybody wants to maximize their bank account and all that stuff, but it brings people together in a way and helps build that culture that you're talking about that I found really, really impressive. So Jason Medley, I'd love to keep talking to you, but I have to let you go because I would be criminal not to. But for people that want to learn more about Collective Genius, where can they go do that?
Well, I think you just about said it.
I know, I just did it. I just did it. I didn't even mean to, but I'll let you say the URL so people.
You shorten it up a little bit, but it's literally just learn more about CG.
Yeah.
Learn more about CG. Just a simple web page. It's got a ton of examples, like illustrative, factual examples of how our members benefit from being in CG, connections we've made that make them tons of money, how they've improved their businesses from a systems perspective. You name it. It's how they save on their tax bills, how they it's all right there. You're welcome to go check it out. If it's something you'd like to learn more about, once you get there, you can click a little green button, complete an application, schedule a call with our team, and we can help you. Great. And if we can't, no harm, no foul. You will not be pressed.
Yeah. Well, like we said, right? You got to apply to get in. You got to be fit to get in. But I got to say, if people are listening to this and you're on the fence, or you've done the Mastermind thing before, I just got to say that there's certainly levels to all games. I think Collective Genius, far and away, one of the best masterminds I've ever been in any industry, and I've been in a few. Jason Medley, thank you so much, man. You really brought it today. I was asking you before the call, I said, we'll make this a home run. You said you wanted to provide value to the audience. You definitely did this. Definitely did that. You really delivered. So thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity.
That is it. That's it for our interview this week. As always, AdWordsNerds.com. You can go there. You can find all our past episodes, show notes, and more. And look, if you are listening to this, it would really mean a lot to me if you would leave REI Marketing Nerds a review wherever you got this podcast. I read every single one, and it helps other people find the show. Thank you so much for showing up here every week. I hope you are getting value out of these interviews. I know I am for sure. And I will see you next week. Cheers.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.